Hi, I'm Seher,
And I'm Shreya. Welcome to our show, Only Spoilers.
where I tell Shreya about a book that I've read or a movie that I've watched. In today's episode, I'm going to finish talking about the book The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. Are you going to read it, Shreya?
Definitely not.
Then let me tell you all about it.
Okay. I don't even know where we left. Oh! He walks in and says lemon.
Oh,
That's where we left off.
yeah.
I'm not going to recap any of the other
Okay,
stuff.
that's fine.
Whoever's
that's
listening
fine.
to it, listen to the episode before this.
That's true.
But all I want to know is what happens now, because she thought she wouldn't be able to see him from 7 years ago again.
Yeah.
And then she did.
Mhm.
So now what?
Yeah, so now she has met the present Ivan and the past Ivan.
Yeah.
Both. Okay, so Clementine walks into in her apartment, and Ivan is there, and she's surprised to see him. He's surprised to see her because he's like, "Lemon, is that you?" And she's like, "Hi, yeah." And he's like, "Oh, I mean, how's it going? Did everything work out with your apartment?" Because the last time they saw each other, he went to work, and then she left for work, and then she never came back to the time, right? So in his mind, he's thinking like, oh, maybe she went back to her apartment because she was just staying here until her apartment got fixed in Brooklyn. But so when she comes back, and she's like, oh, I just came here to say hi to you and everything, and like they look at each other, she realizes how much she misses him, and like he's also looking at her that way, that he misses her, but like they don't say anything. And he's making food, so he's making like some cold noodle dish and everything, and he's
Wait,
like,
how much time has passed since she saw him?
month and a half,
Oh, okay.
because the last time she saw him, and then the whole 4th of July thing happened, so it's been a
okay.
month and a half
All right.
since she's seen the 7-year, like the past Ivan.
Okay.
So he's making dinner, and he's like, oh, so let's eat, and then they are catching up and everything. So they sit and eat, and he's like, oh, here, bon appetit, lemon. And then she's like, can you say that again? And Ivan is like, why do you want to make fun of my French? And she's like, no, I want to get used to my nickname, so say it again. So he says it, but then they start eating. He talks about her job. She asks about his job, how he's doing as a dishwasher and everything. And he's like, it's going great. My hands are really dry because all he does is dishes every day, and he's really tired. But he's happy because he got his dream job, and like not the dream job, but like in the restaurant that he wanted to work in. But then he tells her that there's a position open for a line cook, which he's debating applying for because there's another person who's going to apply for the role, and Ivan thinks he doesn't deserve to apply yet because he doesn't have that much experience, and the other person has more experience. But Clementine is like, no, you can't think like that. Like, it does, like, who's deciding that you haven't paid your dues yet? You are talented, I can tell that, and you should apply to the job. So don't second guess yourself, don't underestimate yourself. And he's like, okay. And then he gets a call from his mom. He goes to the other room, and he's like, oh, everything is fine, like, I'll call you back later, I have a friend over and everything. So when he comes back to the kitchen, Clementine asks, like, is everything okay? He's like, yeah, my mother says hi. And she's like, how does your mother know about me? Like, did you tell her about me? He's like, yeah, she just knows you, like, you're my friend and everything. And they talk. And but Clementine is still wondering in her head, like, what happened to him 7 years later that led him to become, like, a colder version of this person, and why he rejected their book offer and all of that. And so she poses a hypothetical question in front of this Ivan, saying like, oh, at work, there's this author we're trying to work with, and he rejected our offer. And like, what do you think we should do to, or I should do to convince him? So, and Ivan doesn't know all the details. Like, he doesn't know that it's him, and like, then this person is a chef and all of that. So Ivan is like, oh, if this person is writing a cookbook, if this person was actually a chef, you could have, talked to him at a chef level, that try to convince him that your team, like, a good kitchen only works if it's a good teamwork, and like, you can, try to convince him that you and Drew and your team also works really well together. So you're going to cater to him really well. And Clementine realizes that he's right. Like, she needs to convince the chef part in James to, accept their offer and everything.
Mhm.
So she takes the dishes and starts doing the dishes once they're done eating. And then James is like, no, no, like Ivan is like, no, no, let me do it. And she's like, no, it's our deal. You cook, I clean. So she is doing the dishes in the sink, and he comes over and he hooks his chin over her shoulder and he leans against her, and like, he's just talking to her and everything. And like they're having this conversation about convincing the current Ivan while like she's doing the dishes. And she looks at the time, it's almost 8 o'clock, and she knows that James's kitchen closes in an hour. So she finishes the dishes, she turns around, kisses Ivan, and she's trying to leave because she wants to go talk to James. So, but then Ivan holds her and he's like, where are you running away? And then he kisses her some more and he's like, these are like incentives for you to come back sooner to me. And she's like, I promise I'll come back to you, but I just need to go and, finish this work. But I promise, like, she's making a false promise. It's not in her hands if she'll come back or not. But and for a second, she thinks like if she doesn't leave, she wouldn't have to, say goodbye to him and all of that. But she knows that she needs to do this. So she kisses him, promises to come back, and leaves. And then she drives down to Soho to James's restaurant. And the last time she was at the Olive Branch, she was there with her friends for lunch, right? So the vibe of the whole restaurant was different. But at night, it's a little more fancier, and everybody is dressed really nicely, and they're all taking pictures of the bite-sized foods and stuff. It's all very posh. And the hostess asks Clementine like if she's on the list, because obviously, it's a famous restaurant, so you can't just walk in and get a table. You need reservations in advance. So Clementine tries to make some story up like, oh, I know I need to talk to James Ashton. She's like, yeah, everybody wants to talk to him. Like, but do you have a reservation or do you have an appointment with him? Clementine is, no, I'm like from this magazine and blah, blah, blah. She tries to lie her way and then she runs inside. And then the hostess is like, hey, you can't just go in. So, but she can't run after her, like, because there's other guests waiting at the reception. So Clementine runs into the kitchen and she's like, and so somebody is like, you can't be here, what are you doing here, get out, like this is not safe for you. And she's like, oh, I'm looking for James. And she's like, yeah, everybody's looking for him. Just so the sous chef asks the server to escort Clementine out so that they can keep working and it's not safe for her or anybody else to be in the kitchen. So Clementine is being escorted very very politely by this server who's like, I'm so sorry, ma'am, but like, you need to leave and blah, blah, blah. Then James comes out of the kitchen and he's like, he's like, what are you doing here? And then she asks him like, why did you reject our proposal? And like, is it because of me? And you don't have to take anything seriously, we just kissed like 7 years ago, it's not that serious. Like, if you
No, she did not say that.
she did.
No.
And then
does she not know any better?
She doesn't.
Oh my god.
And then because he's also acting very cold, right?
Yeah.
The moment she walked into that meeting room, she didn't know if he remembered her, but like only when he said that nice to see you again, Lemon, is when she realizes. But then he rejected the proposal, so she doesn't know what to think.
Yeah.
Like, and she doesn't even know what happened between them.
Yeah.
So she asks him like, it's not fair, like whatever was between us, it's not that important, you have to give Drew a chance, she's really good, I am really good at my job, I will take your book to new heights, like I'll really take care of it, so just give us another chance and all of that. And and he's like, I thought you didn't want to work with me, Lemon, because of the face you made when you were in that room. And like her resting face is like very annoyed and stuff. She like she gets a crease between her eyebrows, and he knows her face, right?
Yeah.
So she's like, James is like, I thought you didn't want to work with me. That's why I rejected your proposal. But it's okay. I can talk to my literary agent, and we can change it. And she's she's relieved that she didn't butcher this opportunity for her best friend.
Yeah.
And then before he leaves, he says, "I don't like when we fight, Lemon." And then he leaves.
Oh my god. What?
So I know he's very dreamy.
Oh my god.
So that night when Clementine goes back to her apartment, she doesn't see Ivan again. Like the apartment doesn't take her back in time. So she goes back to living her life. And a few days later, Drew is very happy because James's agent got back to them and they got selected for the second round of selection for the book and everything. And they're all very happy. Clementine and Drew are like, okay, now we have to, come up with a plan, because the second round of selection is like a cooking class where all the publishing companies who were selected, they're gonna attend a cooking class at James's restaurant, and then he will decide who gets the contract. So Drew is like, okay, it's a plan. I'm gonna cook. Clementine, you do the chopping, because none of them know how to cook. They're afraid that they're gonna set his whole restaurant on fire. But they're like, no, I mean, a little bit we can handle it. Then there's a package delivered at work for Clementine, and it's addressed from her aunt to her. And then she's very shocked to see it because her aunt has been dead for 6 months. But then it's not unusual, because every time her aunt was out on a trip somewhere, she would send her gifts from overseas and stuff. And a lot of time those packages got lost in the mail. So she thought, like, this must be something from her last trip and all. But Clementine doesn't want to open the package because, again, she's hurt that her aunt left like that, and she throws it in the trash and leaves. And she goes, and then she remembers. So last November, Clementine was talking to her aunt, and she had just gotten back from her trip from Antarctica. That was the last place she had not seen. So like it was a solo trip for her aunt. And then she calls Clementine like, "Hi, how are you? Like, I'm back from our trip, and I don't really want to be back in town. Let's go take an impromptu trip somewhere." And then Clementine is like, "No, aunt, like I can't go. I have a job and responsibilities and stuff, but I'm looking forward to our trip to Iceland in August. I just booked the tickets and everything. So I'm sorry, but just stay put. Like we'll go on a trip soon. I'll see you at our New Year's party and everything. And I promise, like, we can plan our Iceland trip together." And then at that point, like Clementine's aunt is like 62 years, and she's been diagnosed with arthritis. So she's also struggling with her disease a little bit. Like in her heart, she's still young and wants to explore and everything, but her body is like, slowing her down. So she's struggling with that a little bit. So come New Year's Eve, Clementine had a good time at her parents' party and everything. And she wakes up to a bunch of phone calls and stuff, and she's hungover, and she's like, "Who the hell is calling me?" And she answers her mom's phone, and her mom is crying, and she's like, "She's gone. She's gone. Annie is gone." And Clementine is like, What do you mean she's gone?" She's like, "Yeah, her neighbors found her." So Clementine's aunt killed herself. And
Why?
we don't know, because I guess because she was unhappy. She Because of like her disease, or it's just, she just didn't know what to do with her life anymore. And she felt like, Clementine is also living her own life. So she was just alone and lonely. So maybe she didn't want to, keep living like that, or be shackled by her disease anymore. So
But she had a trip coming up.
yeah.
That's so awful.
Yeah. So that really broke Clementine, right? Because she didn't get to say goodbye to her aunt.
Yeah.
Like she just left. She didn't. And like, how do you deal with something like that? Clementine now is blaming herself. Like, maybe I should have seen the signs. Maybe if I didn't hang up on her in November when I talked to her, or if I agreed to go on the trip with her, she would still be here. And like, she's struggling with remember the last happy moment she had with her aunt. But like, you know how memory is. It like, you remember stuff you don't want to, and you forget the stuff that you want to remember. And it's just, that's why she's like, completely heartbroken, because her aunt just left her like that. Like she wanted to be like this woman, And then when she died, Clementine just recoiled from all of that. She went back into her shell. She didn't want to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing that package brought back all those memories in her head, and she didn't want it anymore. So she throws it into the trash and she goes back to her work. But then later that day, she's like, this is the last thing I'll ever get from her. Let me just retrieve it. But it's not in the trash anymore. It's gone.
Mm.
So she's like, fuck, whatever. Then a week later, the cooking class happens at James's restaurant. Hold on, let me take a sip of water. So a week later, the cooking class happens. So Clementine and Drew go to James's restaurant, and everybody else from the publishing company, all the big names are also there. So they get introduced to everyone. Like Drew already knows everyone, but in the last 6 months, Clementine hasn't really socialized a lot, so she doesn't know her counterparts or like her peers in other publishing houses. So she gets introduced to everyone. Everybody knows Clementine. So they're like, oh, it's really nice to meet you, blah, 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 blah. And then James comes out and introduces everyone. They're like, we're ready to, start the cooking class. They're going to cook the favorite, like the most popular dish on his menu. It's like a ravioli. So they'd all do that. One of the other editors, he almost set his whole station on fire. He's really bad at cooking and stuff. And like everybody had a good time. Even Drew and Clementine had a good time. Their dish didn't look pretty, but it tasted really well. So all of that happens. They pack up all the food, they leave. Clementine gives her portion of the food also to Drew to take back to Fiona because she didn't attend the cooking class and all of that. And then everybody has left, and Clementine is waiting for her cab, which apparently is like circling around the wrong block. And she's just like, this guy is either gonna, cancel the trip or just whatever. And then James comes out of the restaurant because he's locking up and everything. And he's like, oh, you're still here. Do you want a ride home or like something? And she's like, no, I'm just waiting for my cab. And then he asks her, like, you're still hungry? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, there's a place I know nearby. So, let's go. So
Okay.
they start walking, but they're not talking anymore. Like, it's like an awkward silence. And then Clementine asks him, like, did you plan on saying anything else after asking me to dinner or not? And he's like, actually, not really. I'm really bad at planning. So, and then he's like, he asks about Clementine's aunt and how she is. And then Clementine tells him that, my aunt passed away. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry and everything. And she's like, it's okay. I mean, how could you have known? It was like, you and I met 7 years ago. And then he says, but you don't look like you aged at all. And she's like, I can give you my skincare routine if you want. And he's like, wait, are you calling me old? And she's like, no, I mean, not really. And then he says, yeah, it was for him, he says it felt longer than 7 years. And then so they like while they're talking, they're looking at each other. They stop walking and they're saying all these things. And then Clementine like puts her hand on his cheek, and then he leans into her touch, and like she runs a thumb across his nose, and then she feels like a bump on his nose, and she's like, when did you break your nose? And then he's like, oh, last year at my sister's wedding, because she was throwing the bouquet and the bouquet hit me on the nose, and like there was like a
thorn.
metal clamp on it that hit me directly on my nose. And everybody was mad at me because I caught it, and all these other women wanted to catch it. So Clementine is like, oh, so it's next is your turn to get married. And then he says, yeah, but like, I'm not one for commitment and everything. And she's like, yeah, your Instagram says so. And then James
Why? What
is
does
like,
his Instagram say?
I mean, she stalked him completely. So she sees one woman and then it's another woman. So he doesn't date anyone for long enough.
Okay.
It's like he's dated a bunch of people, but nobody for a while and nobody for a long time.
Yeah.
So he says, maybe I didn't find the one I'm looking for. And then Clementine is like, is that like, and then she's like, oh, oh God. I just ruined the whole moment.
Let's gather our thoughts.
Yes. So he's like, I'm not somebody for commitment. And she's like, yeah, I can see it from your Instagram. But then he asks her, like, why don't you ever call me Ivan?
Oh.
Why do you always call me James? And he's like, and then Clementine says, I thought only your friends called you Ivan. And then she's like, I thought we weren't friends. And then he's about to answer her, but then somebody calls his name from behind. He's like, Ivan, Ivan. And they turn around and it's like a food truck called Your Mama's Fajitas. And James is like, fuck, I didn't realize this person is going to be here. So they walk towards the food truck, and it's somebody named Miguel and his fiance Isa, who are James's friends from culinary school.
Aww.
And Miguel is like, "Oh, what are you doing here? I thought I was gonna see you at the weekend on the weekend." And James is like, "Why I can't come see you before that?" And Miguel is like, "Why do you want a job? Are you looking for a job or something?" And then James is like, "Why do you want to come work for my restaurant?" He's like, "At that expensive ass restaurant, fuck that."
Yeah.
And like they have this really nice banter. And then James introduces Clementine as Lemon. He's like, "Oh, Miguel, meet Lemon." And then Clementine in her head is like, okay, I mean, it's fine. Maybe he just wants to use my real name in professional settings, right?
Okay.
So because he's never ever called her Lemon in front of anybody else.
Yeah.
But he introduces them as Lemon and Miguel and Isa.
Yeah.
So they order food and everything, and then Clementine realizes that this is the guy whose fajitas recipe Ivan cooked for her the first night they met.
Oh, yeah.
And then she asks him, like, so you bullied your friend into opening a food
restaurant.
truck, right?
Uh-huh.
And then it takes James a while to realize what she's saying. And then he's like, yeah, you remember that? She's like, of course I remember that.
Yeah.
And they order their food and everything, and they're all just talking and everything. Like Miguel and Isa are making fun of James, and like, how he's just working towards a Michelin star, and like how he's hell bent on convincing them to apply for a Michelin star, because in like New York, a food truck is considered a restaurant and they're eligible to earn Michelin stars. And they're like, we're not about that. Like, we cook because we love cooking. We don't want the accolades and stuff and all of that. So, and then Clementine gets a text from Drew and Fiona asking like if she made it home or not, because she was supposed to check in with them and she didn't because she got distracted by James. So she excuses herself and walks towards the benches near I think this is like Washington Square Park where they are. So she walks towards the benches and James is like, it's okay, you go, I'll bring the food. So she orders like chicken fajitas, he ordered something else, and they both get a beer and everything. So she replies to Drew and Fiona, and then James brings their food and they sit on the bench and they're eating, they're catching up about her job, his job, and all of that. And then she asks him, like, I'm sure your grandfather must be proud of, like, of what all you have achieved and stuff. And he says, oh, my grandfather passed away. And she's like, oh no, I'm so sorry, when? And then he says, almost 7 years ago now. So the day I got an apartment with my friends is the day he passed away,
Oh,
like a few
no.
days after that. So Clementine is really sad about that because she realizes that his grandfather didn't get to see Ivan achieve everything and all of that. So she's really sorry about it. And then she says, like, I'm sure your grandpa is proud of you. And then he's like, yeah, I'm sure, I hope so. But then she asks him, like, do you regret, like, all of this? And he's like, um it would be a disservice to who I am and who I was if I said no, but I don't regret it. I do not, because I've sacrificed a lot. I've sacrificed relationships and friendships and other career opportunities for this, and I can't stop now. Like, I have worked too hard for it. But one thing I do regret is not being there for you when your aunt passed away. I really regret that. And then Clementine is like, she had the same reaction you just did.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, it's fine. Like, I'm fine. It's, how could you have known? And he's like, no, you're not fine. Like, he sees her pain.
Yeah.
Of what losing her aunt did to her. But like, um then Clementine asks him like why he didn't find her, like over the last 7 years, what happened that he never came looking for her. And then he says, would you have believed me, Lemon? And then she's like, she doesn't understand, like, and then he's like, let me set the scene. 7 years ago, you are 22 years old, and um he finds her, but he's a stranger to her. And even if he would have told her everything, would she have believed him? And then she's realizing all of this, like, he's right. And but then she's like, um and then, like, while she's thinking all of this, like, there's, like, there's another crease between her eyebrows, like um he puts a thumb over it, and he's like, and she asks him, like, will you tell me what happened? And he's like, is there another option? Like, I don't want to. Like, he takes a pause before he tells her, but then she realizes that maybe it will make things worse if he tells her what happened. So she's like, okay, you don't have to. Like, I mean, we can talk about anything else. Tell me your favorite band, your favorite food, your favorite color. And then James is like, well, I can't tell you my favorite color. You still have to guess it. And then before they could say anything else, Miguel and Isa have closed their food truck, and they join Clementine and James to talk and eat and everything. And they're joking around. And Miguel and Isa are like, do you know how we met him and everything? So these three met at the Culinary Institute of America, and they became friends immediately because they were the oldest people there. And they're making fun of Ivan because James, because he almost failed introduction to breads twice.
Oh my
He
god.
was so bad at them. And the first day in class, Ivan is, James, I should say. James is like knee deep into like kneading his dough for the bread, and the professor, like the head chef, comes up to him and asks James, like, what are you doing? And then James is like, what does it look like I'm doing? And then the chef is like, you're supposed to use a whisk, not a wooden spoon. So that night, and then he got made fun of because of that. And that night, Miguel, Isa, and James go out drinking, and they all get a tattoo behind their left ear. So James has a whisk behind his left ear, and then Isa and Miguel have a spatula and a ladle behind. Like, they all have matching tattoos. And then Clementine is like, "Oh, I feel left alone. Like, I also want to get one."
Yeah.
And then Isa is like, "No, you're not a cook." And then no, she says, "No, you're not a cooking utensil." And then James says, "You are a paintbrush." So that really, like, it's like Clementine is really happy about that. And then Isa asks her, "Oh, what do you do for work?" and blah 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 blah. So Isa and Miguel are now getting to know Clementine and her work and what made her go into publishing and all of that. And then when James gets up to throw out the dishes and the empty beer bottle, Miguel and Isa are, like, just worried about him because they're worried that he's going to burn out. He's working too hard, but he's not doing enough for himself. Like, he's just working towards opening this restaurant, like making his grandfather proud. But they're like, he has lost himself a little bit. But before they can talk about it more, he comes back. And then um, by the end of the night, like, Isa has a lot of stories about James, and they're laughing and having a lot of a very fun time. And by the end of the night, James is laughing again. Like Clementine can see the old Ivan in him again, and she's very happy about that. And then they and then they're talking about James's dating life and everything. And then they're like, do you remember this girl he went out with from Olive Branch when he was just a dishwasher? And then Miguel is like, yeah, wasn't it right after that girl he never shut up about? And then James is like, oh my god, don't tell this story, come on guys. And then Clementine is like, no, tell me. They're like, oh, what was her name? He never shut up about her. And he's like, oh, wait, wasn't it that song, Oh My Darling Clementine?
Oh my god.
That's why he introduced her as Lemon
Lemon
and not Clementine.
Oh my god.
So he was so in love with Clementine that he never shut up about her. Like
Oh my
Miguel
God.
and Isa know about this girl that he was crazy about,
Yeah.
and he and everything.
This is so sweet. Okay.
So once they're done eating, they say goodbye to Miguel and Isa, and James is walking Clementine back to the subway station, and she's like, I loved meeting your friends, and if you think they are crazy, you should meet my friends, Drew and Fiona. They are crazier than these two, and you're gonna have a great time with them. And then and she asks him, so this Clementine, how many Clementines do you know? And then James is like, just the one. And then Clementine is like, oh, she must be lucky. And then he's like, yeah, she is, but she's also very beautiful and smart and talented. And then
Is she there when he's saying all of
yeah,
this?
yeah, yeah. He's saying it in front of Clementine. Like, because she's teasing him about like, how many Clementines do you know?
Oh, okay.
So he's like, yeah, I mean, there's only one, and she's all of these things. And like,
okay.
she gets closer to him. Like, she realizes how much she misses him. Like, she wants to kiss him. But then he says, but she's superly off limits. And then she's hurt by this, and she takes a step back, and she realizes that, you know, maybe he doesn't really want her. Like, maybe he doesn't want this present James doesn't want me anymore.
Yeah.
So she says goodnight to him, and she like runs off. But she hears him call her out, like he's like Lemon, but she doesn't stop, and she just leaves. So, and then when she goes back to the apartment, Ivan is there. And it's pretty late, right? It's like 1 a.m. at this point. And this Ivan is a little drunk on bourbon, and he's like, what are you doing here? Like, you know, it's so late. I'm happy to see you. But she's like, oh, I missed you. I just wanted to see you. So she runs up to him. She kisses him. And he's like, why didn't you come back? Or like, you know, I really missed you. And at this point, she has decided that, you know, she doesn't want to let this Ivan go. And they both really like each other. So they start making out and like all of this. And then he takes his shirt off, and she sees all his tattoos on him, and then she asks about each tattoo and everything, and he's like, if you can count, I have 10. Like, no, Clementine asks Ivan, like, how many tattoos do you have? And he's like, I have 10, and let's see if you can find them all. So she finds each one of them. Like, there's one on his shoulder, on his back, on his chest, on his forearm.
He
and
has
she
the cilantro and then the list. That's all we know about.
Yeah, those two. Like, there's a bunch of other tattoos, and like she kisses each and every one of them. And he tells her where it is from and all of that. And then they have sex, and they're really happy. So next morning, when they wake up in each other's arms, they're all like, you know, it's so nice, and they're talking and everything. But then no, not James. So I should refer to the past Ivan as Ivan, and the present one as James.
Okay.
So Ivan is. So I think Clementine is talking about her aunt. And then Ivan is like, Lemon, why do you always refer to your aunt in the past tense? So, and then she takes a moment to think about it. And then she says to him, like, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. And he's like, try me. But then she says that, you know, my aunt spent so much time away from me and traveling and everything. Like, I always felt like at one point I started feeling disconnected to her. That's why I refer to her in the past. And then he says, then she's like, promise me one thing, Ivan, that you will never change. Like, you will be the same person you are. And then he's like, okay, I will, if you promise me that you will take time from your work to enjoy the things that you like you will paint and you will travel, because I see how overworked you are and how tired you are. And she agrees with him. Like, she's like, yeah, I agree. Like, you know, I have been putting too much into my work and not into myself. And then it's a nice summer day, or like the end of summer in New York. So it's a really nice day. And Ivan is like, okay, let's go out today. We're going to go to the Central Park, and we're going to go rent boats, and we're going to do this. Let's go eat pizza, blah, 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 blah. But they can't go out of the apartment, right? Because they're on different timelines. So Clementine convinces him, so like, let's just let's just stay. And he's like, no, we're not staying. Let's go. So they both get ready, and she's putting her shoes on, and she once again, tries to hold him back, but like he holds her hand, and the moment he opens the door, he vanishes. And like she's only left with like the warmth feeling of his hand in her fingers, and she is just like, oh my god. But like, there's nothing she can do about it. She tried to
Yeah.
hold him, but
What happens to him? Like he leaves the house and she's gone too.
yeah. We'll find out what happens to him.
Oh my god.
So he's gone.
Okay.
Now that she's ready and it's a nice day, she just decides to, go about and run her errands. So she goes downstairs to the lobby, and it has started raining by the time they got ready, because it's like a hot summer day. So you know how it is. It's sunny one, and then it rains for a few hours and stuff.
So this is present.
This is present. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
this is present again. The moment Clementine left her apartment, it's the present time. And then the doorman is talking to Clementine because she's waiting for the rain to stop so she can go out. And he's like, oh, every time it rains, I just remember you and your aunt, like how you guys would run out into the rain every time it rained. And like you guys were so happy. And then Clementine is remembering how much her aunt loved rain. And one summer they were in Paris, and it started raining outside the Louvre, and her aunt pulled Clementine into the rain, and then she pulled a lot of strangers who were taking shade. And she's like, no, let's go, let's enjoy. And then somebody started playing music, and they had such a nice time. And then Clementine is like, sad about it, but she's also happy that she has that memory from her aunt. And then the doorman says, oh, like there's a package for you in the mailbox. So she opens the mailbox, and it's a letter to her aunt. And then Clementine thinks, oh, maybe it was like, a company or like some bill or something, that she had canceled everything in her aunt's name, but maybe something was left over, or it was like a, sent back to the sender address or something. So she looks at who it is from, and it says Veera. You remember the Veera that her aunt was in love with and they lost touch? That Veera is writing Clementine's aunt a letter, and she sees the return address. It is in Upper West Side in New York.
Okay.
So Clementine is like, what the fuck?
Why did it happen now?
Yeah, and like, so this letter was just sent to her.
Yeah.
So it means that Clementine's aunt and Veera have been in touch over the last 20 years. And like, Clementine didn't know about it, and she's really conflicted about it. Like, why my aunt didn't tell me this? And like, what do I do with this? Because clearly, if this letter is coming now, Veera doesn't know that my aunt is dead.
Yeah.
So what the fuck? So she calls Drew and Fiona, and she's like, we need to meet for dinner immediately. Like it's an emergency. So they decide to meet in Soho. There's like this new sushi place that Drew wants to go to. So she's like, okay, let's go there. But it's apparently the restaurant blew up on social media over the weekend. So it's like a really long wait to get a table. And Fiona doesn't want to wait because she's like almost 8.5 months pregnant at this point. So they start walking, and Clementine tells them about the letter, and she's asking them what she should do. Should she open it and reply to it, or return it? Because, clearly Veera doesn't know her aunt is dead, and like they were in touch and all of that. And Drew and Fiona are like, whatever you decide, we will be there for you. Like, we'll be there to support you. So they start walking, and they end up at the food truck again, Miguel and Isa's food truck again, because it's in the same area. So Miguel is like, oh, hey, back so soon and everything. And Drew and Fiona are like, do you know this place? Like, how do you know this place? And like, is it good? Like, they start looking at reviews and stuff for it. And they're like, no, I was here with James last night. These are his friends. And like, oh, you were here with James. But then Clementine is like, no, it's nothing like that, because it's a professional thing and it's Drew's project. She doesn't want to jeopardize anything for Drew again. So she reassures them like, no, it's nothing. It was just like, my cab didn't show up, and like this place was open. It was just professional. Like I was trying to, get back into his good books and stuff. So they're like, okay, fine. And then they all go up to the window, they order food. Drew and Fiona are talking to Miguel and Isa, and they're getting to know each other and everything. And then they all ordered a bottle of water. So Miguel is like, oh, there's like a water cooler beside the food truck. You can go grab the bottles from there. So Clementine walks to the water cooler, and there's somebody sitting on it with like a cap and everything, and she recognizes that it's James.
Mhm.
And he looks really disheveled and hungover. And they're both surprised to see each other. Clementine is like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And he's like, "I should ask you. They're my friends. I hang out with them anytime I want. What are you doing here?" And she's like, "Oh, I was in the area with Drew and Fiona. I just brought them here for to get some food." And he's like, "Oh my God, I'm not ready to meet your friends right now. I'm like, I'm really hungover." And she's like, "I know why I am hungover, because when she went back to the rest to her apartment, she drank a bunch of bourbon with Ivan, and they stayed up all night and everything. So she understands why she is tired." She's like, "Why are you tired?" Like, he's like, "I mean, like, I saw it." Like, and she's understanding that because of her, or like whatever conversations they had last night, he had to go home and drink a bunch.
Okay.
So
Like in present time.
in
whenever
present
the-
time, James,
Oh.
like, she knows why she is drunk, and
Yeah.
past Ivan was drunk, but why is the present James drunk
Okay.
also?
So he was also disheveled by like their
Their conversation,
conversation.
the present time conversation.
okay.
And then he noticed, like, he pushes her hair back and then sees a huge hickey on her neck, and then she's all flustered, and he's like, "Oh, looks like you had a fun time last night after we had dinner. Like, was it hard?" And she's like, "Actually, yeah, it was." And then he's all just, hot and bothered, and he's like, "Don't do that to me, Lemon." He's like, she's like, "You asked me."
Yeah.
And then
Oh my
he
God.
remembers, like, their one night together. He actually remembers it, and he's also getting all flustered. He's like, "I am in no condition to deal with this right now, nor your friends. So, I'm just gonna leave." So he leaves, and then Drew comes over with the food and everything, and they eat.
They didn't see him though, right?
They didn't see him.
Thank God.
They didn't see him. He runs back into the food truck to avoid
Okay.
them, so he doesn't see them. And they eat their food and everything. Clementine goes back to the apartment. She deep cleans it and all of that, and she's still wondering, like, about Vera and her aunt, like, why were they in contact? What actually happened between them? Because what her aunt said, like, they broke up on bad terms, right? Like, Vera never wanted to see her aunt again. Like, why are they talking again? All of that. Then, when Clementine goes back to work on Monday, she sees her boss, who's already at work, and she is comparing herself to Rhonda, and she's like, how much of her life this woman has given up to work in this industry to reach where she is. And Clementine is realizing that maybe she doesn't want that anymore, because she realizes that she's not happy with her work and her life anymore. And there's like this itch inside her of doing something new, doing something more, doing something adventurous. And she feels like the old Clementine who used to paint and go on trips is like, she's coming back a little by little, but she still does, like, I just, have to get the work done. So a few days later, they Drew, Fiona, Clementine, and Juliet, their other co-worker, they get an invite to James's new restaurant soft launch on Thursday. It's called Hyacinth. It's in NoHo. So they're all excited about that. And then that day, um, Clementine decides to go meet Vera and return her letter to her. And she asks Drew and Fiona to come along with her. So they go to Vera's building. Drew and Fiona wait outside, but Clementine rings the doorbell and she introduces herself like, "Hi, I'm Clementine West. I'm Annie's niece. And, like, I got this letter from you." And then Vera's like, "Oh, hi. Like, yeah, come on in." So she buzzes Clementine in, and when Clementine reaches Vera's apartment, she opens the door and Vera hugs her and, like, "Hi, it's so nice to see you and finally meet you." And then Clementine realizes that Vera actually knows who she is.
What do
Like,
you mean?
she realizes that her aunt and Vera have been in touch for a long time, and like her aunt has talked about Clementine to Vera. So Vera knows who Clementine is, and she's like, "You look just like Annie, and it's so nice to finally see you. Please come on in," and everything. And she has like a very slight southern accent and everything, and because she didn't know this part about Vera, like her aunt never told her this, where she's from or all of that. So they sit and talk, and like Clementine gives Vera the letter. It's unopened, and then Vera realizes that Annie is gone, and she asks Clementine like, "What happened? And when did it happen?" So Clementine tells her that um, she was having a lot of trouble sleeping, and like she got prescribed sleeping pills, but one day she took a little more, and then nobody knew, and her neighbors um, did a wellness check on her because they hadn't seen her in a few days, and they found her in her favorite armchair in the living room. And then Vera is really sad. She's like, "I'm so sorry, Clementine. I know how much your aunt meant to you and how much you meant to her." And then Clementine is apologizing to Vera. She's like, "I'm so sorry." And Vera is like, "Oh my God." And then Vera is like, "Why are you saying sorry, dear? Like, you lost her. We both lost her, but it's not your fault." And Clementine has been feeling guilty this whole time, right? Because she thought, I should have done something. I should have known. Maybe I could have saved her. So they hug each other, and Clementine is crying and crying and crying. And then but Vera is like, then Clementine asks Vera, like, "What actually happened between you guys? Like, I thought you didn't want to be in touch." And Vera is like, "It was actually Annie who didn't want to be together because she was always the person who was afraid of losing a good thing." And Vera also regrets not fighting for Annie more than she should have. But she was also heartbroken. So she, went back to her hometown, and um, she's recently moved back to New York because her son has a job here. So and she's like, "I'm glad that you had more time with her than me, and she was a great woman," and all of that. Then Clementine gets a message on her phone or something, and then Vera is like, "You can come back anytime you want. I have stories for days about Annie, and it's so nice to finally see you," and everything. And while Clementine is leaving the apartment, she looks around and she sees pictures of Vera with her family, and then she sees like a younger Vera with like a son and a daughter. Both of them have red hair, and her older dad. And then she looks at more pictures, and she recognizes the guy who's in the picture, and it's Ivan.
Shut up.
Yeah.
So Ivan is her son?
Ivan is Vera's son.
What the fuck?
Yeah. So you remember when Ivan first meets Clementine, he says, "Oh, your aunt is my mother's friend."
Yeah,
That's
but
why
I don't remember. I vaguely remember, but not really.
Yeah, that's why she's letting me stay in this apartment, because my aunt is friends with my mother.
Yeah.
So it's actually Vera. So Vera's son is Ivan. And then when Clementine sees all the pictures and she recognizes Ivan, her whole world is rocked. And then Vera is like, "Oh, that's my son. He's a chef here. He's opening a restaurant pretty soon. He's really handsome. I think you should meet him." And and Clementine is like, "Yeah, yeah, he is very handsome." She doesn't tell Vera that she knows him and everything, but she's just, "Yeah, it was nice to see you," and she leaves.
Oh my god. I was not expecting that.
I actually saw this coming.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how, but I was like, it has to be Vera. Because Annie sounds like a woman who doesn't really have a lot of friends. And somehow Vera has to be attached to this, right? And when Ivan talks about his family, he never talks about a father. He always talks about a mother and a sister and a grandfather.
Yeah.
And then the moment she said Vera has a southern accent, I was like, this is that's why I told you that detail. Like, Vera has a southern accent.
Okay.
I was like, maybe, she'll catch on.
No.
It's okay. I'm
I
glad.
didn't even know
I'm
that.
glad it was a surprise to you.
Okay.
Because I wish it was not. It was more of a surprise to me too. I
Yeah.
wish the foreshadowing. I didn't pay attention to it that much.
Uh-huh.
I'm happy for you.
Yeah, I didn't know that Ivan had a Southern accent.
He's from North Carolina.
Yeah, but I like didn't put two and two together.
Yeah. He also has a Southern drawl.
Oh, okay.
So Vera is Vera Ashton, James Ivan Ashton's mother. And
Okay.
James is his like grandfather's name and everything.
Okay.
Right. So then Clementine leaves. And then for the rest of the week, she's wondering like how the fuck did she not make the connection and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then she's like, did the apartment know that, Vera, because Vera also lived in that apartment, right? That's how Annie and Vera met. And then she's like, did the apartment know that Ivan is Vera's son? And is that why their timelines were brought together at crossroads and stuff? Like she's wondering like, how does this mysterious universal thing work that Ivan and I were brought together when our aunt and his mother knew each other?
Yeah, and did Clementine's mom aunt tell Vera like, oh, this is a magical apartment, blah blah blah.
Vera is the one who told Annie, right?
Oh, that's true.
Because Vera lived there first, and then Annie lived there.
Okay,
that's how they met.
Okay,
like they've also met 7 years apart.
Right.
But Vera never told Ivan that this whole thing about her past, I think.
Oh, that was going to be my question. Whether Vera told her son, told Ivan that it's a magical apartment.
No. Because who would believe that? Who would believe it? Unless you experience it. Clementine also never believed it until she experienced it.
Yeah.
She always thought her aunt had a very active imagination.
Yeah.
She thought the apartment was magical in a different sense.
Okay, yeah.
But not this. She never believed that this will happen to her. She always believed even if it were to happen to her, she would only see her aunt.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought Ivan would have known the whole time. Okay.
He doesn't know.
That's why he's like so chill about it.
Yeah.
Like that's what I would think, but if he doesn't know, then okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
wait, then I wonder if he told his mom, oh, I met this like really nice girl at the apartment. Wouldn't Vera tell her son?
We don't know what details he told his mom either.
Oh yeah.
I mean, these could all be like, plot holes and stuff. Like,
yeah.
Did he tell Vera? Did Vera know? Did he not tell her? All of these things.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. So then it's the night of James's new restaurant soft launch.
Uh-huh.
So they all get dressed up like Fiona, Drew, Clementine, and Juliet. And then Clementine is wearing heels after a very long time. And they're like, oh, how come you're wearing heels tonight? Do you want to impress someone? And they're all like, ooh, maybe she's, trying to impress James. And they're teasing her again. And she's like, no, it's just like, I just wanted to dress up and blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And then in Clementine's head, she's very excited to see the restaurant because when Ivan talked about opening his own restaurant, he had this whole thing in his head that he's going to open a restaurant that will have like long wooden family style tables and red leather chairs and like all warm and cozy. And I don't know if I told you this conversation or not, but he wanted his restaurant to be covered in art. And when he finds out that Clementine paints, he wants her to commission paintings for his restaurant.
Oh wow,
right?
Really?
Did I tell you this or not?
No.
Oh, so I think the second day, the first weekend that they met, the second day when Clementine is painting in the bathtub and stuff, right? So Ivan is like, oh, you paint and stuff. And he tells her like, oh, I want to commission your paintings for my future restaurant. And she's like, oh, I don't take commissions. And he's like, okay, I'll make you a deal. You give me paintings if I promise to keep a table reserved for you and free food for you every night.
Aww.
So she's expecting that kind of homely, warm kind of interior in his restaurant, right? Because this is his dream.
Shit, it's not going to be. It's going to be everything I hate, which is minimalistic, white.
Yes. So the moment they enter the restaurant, Clementine is she's heartbroken. She's half in tears because it's really bright. It's like exposed pipe plumbing in the ceiling and white marble tabletops and really uncomfortable looking chairs. And it's just not who Ivan is or who he was. And it's just mind blowing to her, and all the people around and everything are just like, they look very pretentious, and nobody feels like, they're actually here for the food. And Clementine is also very worried, like, she's like, I don't even know which spoon to use, because she
Yeah.
always gets nervous at fancy restaurants.
Yeah.
And that was their whole thing when they, like, connected that no, it's about the food, not the skill and everything. And this
Yeah.
is completely opposite to all of that. And she's just like, what the actual fuck happened to this man? So they're all sitting at their table, and then she looks around, and she sees Veera,
Yeah.
because she's the
attending.
mother, right?
Yeah.
So she goes up and says hi to her, and Veera's like, oh, I'm surprised that you're here. I thought this was invite only. I didn't know you knew my son. And she's like, oh, I'm actually, my publishing company is working with his book. And like, she tells her the professional reason she's here. And then Veera's daughter Lily and her husband, they walk in, they get introduced to each other. And then Lily asks her, like, oh, are you the same Clementine whose aunt let Ivan stay in her apartment? And then Veera's like, yeah, just it's so mysterious how it works. Like, if Annie never let him stay here, he wouldn't have gotten his chance, and all of that. And like, Clementine is almost on the verge of tears. She's like, it was so nice to see you. Like, I have to go back. And Veera invites her to sit with them. And she's like, no, it's okay. You guys enjoy. I'm here with friends. Like, this is like a work thing. So I'll see you later. It was nice to see you. So she goes back to her table. The food starts coming out. It's all very nice. It's very delicious, but it's all bite sized. And because it's like an opening and like it's a tasting menu and stuff, right? But the food is delicious, but it's all very pretentious, like cold noodles using dry ice and like all the technical fancy stuff. And when the dessert comes out, it's a lemon meringue pie. That was Clementine's last straw. Because you remember when he made her a lemon pie? In their apartment. So that was a twist on the lemon meringue pie, but he makes a lemon whipped cream pie because when he was in school, he sucked at making meringue. He's like, this is one thing I can never get. I cannot make. And he's like, it's fine. Like, to be a chef, you don't have to be perfect at everything.
Yeah.
So this is my own twist on a lemon meringue pie. I used whipped cream.
Yeah.
So she was very happy about that.
Yeah.
But now he has perfected the meringue, and he's serving it.
Yeah.
And like the meringue is perfect. It tastes really well. The graham cracker base is really well. It's delicious, but it's not who Ivan is.
Yeah.
So Clementine excuses herself from the table because she wants to bawl her eyes out at this point.
Yeah.
She is crying.
Yeah.
So she runs to the restroom, but the restroom is occupied, and she waits outside. And then Ivan comes out, and like James asks him.
We get it.
Yeah.
We understand.
Yeah. So he asks her, like, hey, so how was it? And then hold on, let me find this because I wrote like exact words that they exchanged.
I'm not ready to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, I wasn't either. So James like walks up to her, and like he asks her, like, how was it? And she says, it's a nice restaurant. And then he's like, you don't like it, do you? And she's like, no, I mean, like, she, before she could say anything, he sees it on her face because like she's so distraught and everything. And she says, like, I'm really sorry. And like the food was really nice and everything. But then he's like, why don't you ever call me Ivan? Like, what is your issue? Why do you always call me James? And then she's like, I used to have these lovely dinners with this man named Ivan who told me that you can find romance in a piece of chocolate and love in a lemon pie. But the dishes that you serve tonight, I don't know. She says this, and then James is like, but those dishes won't have impressed these people, Lemon. Like, I was a dishwasher back then. I didn't know better. And now I have perfected my art, and I'm making a perfect meal for the people. I'm making my grandfather proud, and you're still not happy. Like, what do you want from me? I am still the same person I was, but you don't see it. And she's like, okay, just do one thing for me. Close your eyes and listen and hear. Tell me what you hear. And he's like, no. And she's like, please just, do this one thing for me. And he closes his eyes, and he hears all the noises, and he's like, oh, the AC makes a noise and I have to fix that. And everybody seems to be talking and enjoying their food and everything. And then she's like, but do you hear laughter? And
Yeah.
he's like, I hope not. And she's like, no, not at you. Do you hear people talking and laughing with each other?
Yeah.
And then he's like, I'm doing something new here, something inventive, and I'm giving the people the perfect meal, and it's my dream. I've worked for this. And then Clementine is like, but did you have to lose yourself in getting here? Like, and then he interrupts by saying, like, it was me. It's not who I am. That person who said all those things was an inexperienced man. And then he's like, you tell me, Clementine, if I was still a dishwasher, would you be here? Would you be pursuing me for my cookbook? Would all these people be here right now, running around after me if I was still that man? And she's like, but that's not the point. Like, it's, I mean, that's not what I'm trying to say. And then before she could say anything else, or they could talk about it more, there's like a commotion in the restaurant, and they both run out like to see what's going on. And then turns out Fiona has gone into labor. And so Drew and Clementine and Juliet, they all rush her out of the restaurant and get her a cab and get her into a get her to the hospital, where like a few hours later she gives birth to like a baby girl. They name her Penelope and everybody is happy. But while sitting in the waiting room, Clementine realizes that James to a certain point was right. Like, she wouldn't be running after him if he wasn't who he is, if he wasn't the person, like the famous chef he was. Clementine would be nowhere near him, because she, as a publicist, she only went after the really talented people, right? But then Lemon, who was an overworked and overtired person, she saw the exhausted man with a crooked smile, who, like, she met in the displaced time. And like, it makes her really sad that he lost some part of him, and she also has lost some part of herself. And like, they don't see eye to eye at what is right and what is wrong. So and then over this weekend, Clementine decides to quit her job. So she goes back to the office on Monday, and she resigns, and her boss is like, what happened? Like, I'm sad that you're going, because I was going to name you my successor. And then Clementine is like, I thought this is what I wanted, but I realized that I'm not happy, and like, this work doesn't give me joy anymore. And a old friend came back into my life, and that made me realize that I'm not enjoying anymore. So, and then Rhonda is like, it's fine, like, I'm upset, but I'm also happy for you, because I don't want you to kill yourself to do this job. Like, if you're not happy, you're not going to excel at it. I'm doing this job because I actually love it. Like, Rhonda has no love and like no significant other, no family, no nothing. Her whole life is her job. And Clementine thought she wanted to be that, but she realizes she doesn't, so she's leaving. And it's fine. Like, her boss is okay with it. Her friends are sad that she's leaving, but they're also happy because she started painting again, and like, she maybe has an interest in James, so they're happy. Like, maybe she's ready to find love again, and she's going back to painting. She's healing from her aunt's death. And then it's Clementine's birthday weekend, and her parents come to town to have lunch with her, because it's their tradition. Every year they go to the same restaurant called, it's some pun on the word eggs. It's called Eggstront, I think. And they go there every year. Her parents always order the same thing, but Clementine always orders something new from the menu. But they've been going there for like almost 30 years, so she's also run out of ordering new things. Like, at that point, she realizes how different she is from her parents, and how much she's like her aunt. Like, her parents love routine and like doing the same thing. She thought she also loved routine, but she doesn't. Like, she wanted to be like wild and adventurous like her aunt. When her aunt died, that part of her died a little bit, but now she's coming back to it. So, and now she's really afraid of telling her parents that she's quit her job, because her parents are not quitters. Like, she's thinking she'll disappoint them and everything. So they eat their food and all of that. And when Clementine's mother gets up to go to the restroom, she finally tells her dad, like, I left my job. And he's like, oh, it's okay, do you have a offer somewhere else? And she's like, no, I just quit it. And he's not upset with her. He's like upset about it a little bit, like, because she had a really nice job. She was doing good at it. But he's trying to understand, like, where she's coming from. And he's like, it's okay. I mean, we will support you in whatever you want to do. And she's like, yeah, I have a little bit of a bunch of savings, so I should be fine for a while. And then I can sell the apartment. And he's like, are you sure? Like, you love the place. She's like, I only loved the apartment when Annie was there. And now it just reminds me of her. So I'm not happy living there. I need to move on from all of this. And Clementine's mother overhears this whole conversation because they thought she was gone, but like she had come back to the table. And Clementine is like, I'm so sorry, mom. Like, I wanted to tell you sooner. I just was afraid that I'm going to disappoint you because you guys, like, you are so good at what you do. And they're like, don't think like that. Like, we're not disappointed in you. We actually think you're very brave because you decided that you wanted to be a publisher after a conversation with a strange man in a cab. So, like, whatever you want to do, we'll support you. And she's like, yeah. And they're like, she's reassured a little bit that she's not making a mistake. And then after the restaurant, they go have ice cream, and like they do their tradition of what they do every year. And then on her way back to her apartment, she's remembering this incident that her parents brought up, that literally 7 years ago to the date, she came back from her trip with her aunt, like from Europe. And after she dropped her aunt off at the apartments, she got into a cab where there was another guy who was already sitting in the cab. And like, he's like, no, it's okay, we're both going the same way, so we can share the cab. Because he was like, oh, I can leave. And she's like, no, I can leave. But they're like, it's fine, we'll share it. And they ended up talking to each other about like, what do you do for work, and like, what do you want to do for work? Because Clementine at 22 had just graduated from college, and she didn't know where to apply for work. And she's talking to this person about how she loves books and stuff. And he's like, oh, maybe you should work in publishing and all of that. And he tells her that he has just moved in, or like he's just rented an apartment with his two best friends. And he's very excited to live with them and everything. And as she's getting closer to the apartment, she's trying to remember who this person was. And like, she vaguely remembers like a crooked smile and everything. And she realizes that that person who she talked to was actually Ivan
Okay.
7 years ago,
Okay.
the day she got back from her trip from Europe. So she goes back to her apartment in the hopes that, today she might see him for the last time, because she realizes that today is the day she comes back from Europe, and Ivan is going to leave the apartment and he's going to move out because her aunt is going to come back, so he has to leave. So she goes back to her apartment in the hopes that he would still be there. She didn't miss him. She opens the apartment, it's quiet and dark, but he's there, like he's sitting there. And then he's like, Lemon, is that you? Are you a ghost? Like, what happened to you? Where'd you go? Because you remember the last time he saw her, she like the moment
Vanished.
she vanished.
Yeah.
And then she runs up to him, hugs him, and then he's like, I'm so sorry. Clementine is like, I'm so sorry. And he's like, are you real? Ivan asks him, like, are you real? And he's like, and then Clementine is like, let me tell you a story. So she tells him the whole history of the apartment and what actually is the timeline and everything. And but like, she doesn't give him like really specific details. She just tells him like vaguely. And then he's like, um And then he's like, but why 7 years? And then she's like, why not? Like 7 years is a lucky number. Like seven is a lucky number. Maybe seven is the number of rainbows you're gonna see, or the lemon pies you're gonna burn, or maybe that's the time you have to wait before you see me again in the future. And then he's like, I will never have to wait to see you if I never let you go. And then he doesn't want to leave at this point. He was supposed to leave an hour ago, but he kept waiting until like hoping to see Clementine again. So she's like, and then Clementine realizes that 7 years ago, the 22-year-old Clementine was the wrong person for Ivan, because at that point she didn't want to find love, she didn't want to settle down or anything, she just wanted to live her life. But this Ivan, the 26-year-old Ivan, was ready to love with his whole heart and everything. And she's glad that they didn't really meet, because she would have broken him. So and she realizes how much she loves Ivan, but she also realizes that she has to let this Ivan go so she can get the current Ivan, the James, that is. And even though they seem like different people, they're not. He's still the same person. He's just changed a little bit. And then she also needs to, change a little bit. So this Ivan is like, he's like, who will I be in the future? And she tells him, like, you're going to be a great cook, you'll travel the world, you'll make a lot of good food, and you'll have the career of of your dreams and everything. And he's like, so you've met me in the future? She's like, yeah, we will meet again, but you have to just wait to see me again. And they kiss for the last time. And before he leaves, he says that I'm going to see you in a few years, Lemon, right? Will you promise? And then she's like, yeah, I promise. And then she says, but you have to promise me that you will never change. And then he says, okay. And then he leaves. And then she's just standing in the apartment looking around for the last time, because she knows this is the last time she's going to be in this past timeline, because this is the last time she knows her and I will never meet. So she's just looking around, taking in the memories and like the feelings of her aunt's old apartment. And then she hears the door open and she's like, Ivan, is that you? Did you forget your toothbrush again? And then she sees her aunt at the door, who's finally back from her trip.
Aww.
And then her aunt is really happy to see her. She's smiling and they hug. And like Clementine is very happy to get to meet her own ghost from the past.
Yeah.
So that all happens. And then a few days later, so this was the weekend, and then on Wednesday, it's actually Clementine's birthday, and she's at the Met sitting in front of Van Gogh, like how she does every year, right? She goes to the Met and sit in front of the Van Gogh paintings, and her friends are there. They're all sharing a flask of wine, and they all have brought gifts for her and everything. And then Clementine is very happy that they're here, but they all go around and like they're like, okay, we'll just be around, we'll explore the museum on our own, you be here, like you spend your own alone time. And she's like, okay, fine. But then Drew comes back and she's like, oh, I have another gift for you. And she pulls out the package that Clementine got from her aunt. Remember that she threw away?
Yeah.
So Clementine is really surprised to see it, and Drew's like, I mean, I knew you would regret throwing it away, and I wanted to save it for you when you were ready. I hope you're not mad at me, and like I hope this isn't making you upset or anything. And Clementine is like, no, I'm really happy. Like, thank you so much for saving it for me. So she opens the box, and it's like it's a travel guide from Iceland from her aunt.
Oh.
Because she was, and there's a letter inside like, hey, my love, like I found this in an old bookstore. I'm looking forward to our trip to Iceland and everything.
Oh.
So Clementine is really happy, and she's also very sad that this is the last thing and letter she would ever receive from her aunt. So Drew leaves her, and then Clementine asks her like, oh, whatever happened to the book deal with James? Like, did you ever get it? And Drew was like, yeah, we got the deal, and they're very happy.
Aww.
And they hug and everything. And then Drew is like, okay, like, I'll let you do your own thing. I'll go see if Fiona is okay with the baby or not. So Clementine goes back to sitting in front of the painting, and she starts sketching in the travel guide. She starts sketching pigeons and stuff. And then somebody comes and sits beside her, and like asks her like, "Oh, do you like birds?" And then she looks up, and it's James. And then he's like, "Happy birthday, Lemon." And he pulls out a bouquet of sunflowers.
Oh.
And then she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Happy birthday." And she's like, "How do you know that? Like, how do you know I would be here?" And he's like, "I know you spend every birthday here. Do you not remember telling me this, how you spend your birthdays and stuff?" And she's like, "If you knew I would be here, like, why did you never come see me?" And then he's like, "Because I was afraid you're not going to recognize me. Because you remember, I met you in the cab and I realized that you don't know who I am. So I was afraid that anytime, like, he debated coming to the museum every year on her birthday to see her. But he was like, I don't know when she's going to remember me. So he didn't want to jinx it.
Yeah.
So he never showed up, but he showed up this time because this time he knew she knows him.
Yeah.
So she's very happy to see him. And he's also very sad. And like, it's a bittersweet moment for them. But then he's like, "Do you want to have dinner with me? I know this really nice new restaurant in NoHo." And she's like, "Okay, let's go." So he takes her back to his new restaurant. He named it Hyacinth. I don't know if I told you that. And he named it in all small letters. So, which is weird and whatever. But then he takes her back there and he's like, "Okay, close your eyes." So he closes her eyes, takes her inside the restaurant. When she opens it, it is exactly how he said he would make his restaurant. Like, there's like wooden family style tables now and like red leather chairs. There's art all over the walls. There's like really warm chandeliers and stuff. And there's like a whole wall left blank. And he says, "That is for you to paint whenever you decide you want to."
Oh.
And
That's so sweet.
she's just looking around, and like he again, like, how he did before, he hooks his chin over her shoulder and like he's saying thank you to her. And he says, "Oh, I capitalized the first letter." So it's like a completely rebranding of the restaurant. And he's like, um he says that all his life he wanted to make a place that felt comfortable, where people could come and enjoy a perfect meal with their granddads. And like, this place now feels like home, and it feels like a version of him. And then everything in this restaurant tells a story, like a little piece of his story. And then he thanks Clementine. He's like, "And I have to thank you for reminding me of what I actually wanted and what my dream actually was, because I clearly lost it somewhere around the over the years." And then he's like, and then she turns around in his arms, and then Ivan is like, "I think I'm in love with you, Lemon." And
I always have been.
and then he's like, "I love that you are stubborn and you worry too much and you get a crease between your eyebrows, and how you see parts of people that they don't see in themselves, and how you laugh and you blush." And he says that he loved the woman he met in that apartment, but he also loves this Clementine. But he loves this Clementine a little bit more.
Aw, that's so sweet.
And then she also says that she loves him, and they kiss, and like, they hug for a while. And then she's like, "I thought you would find romance in a piece of chocolate." And then he's like, "I thought I met this woman who found love in a good cheddar."
Okay.
And then he asks her, "Okay, so what do you want for dinner?" And she says, "I want a PB&J."
That's so cute.
So he takes her to his kitchen and he makes her PB&J from like two leftover pieces of this sourdough bread that he made, and like a fruit compote and everything. And like, it's the best PB&J she's ever had. Like, this is better than the one her aunt made. And then she's like, and she tells him that, I quit my job, and maybe, and then he's like, "What are you going to do?" And she's like, "Maybe I'll travel and then, chase the moon a little bit." And he's very happy for her, and he's very supportive of her and everything. And then she asks him if he wants to come back to her apartment. And then
Mhm.
he's like, I will, on the condition that you guess my favorite color.
Okay.
And then she realizes that, you know, he has been telling her all along what his favorite color is, and she whispers it in his ear, and then he agrees that yeah, it is, and it's yellow. Like
Oh.
her favorite color is his favorite color too.
Aww.
So they go back to her apartment, and he tells her how many times he has walked by it in the hopes that, you know, he would see her, and maybe if she sees him she would recognize him.
Mhm.
And he was afraid that, you know, the doorman is going to recognize him and report him because
Keeps walking.
he keeps walking by. And then um he says that he went on so many dates and he kissed so many people and he tried to fall in love again and again and again, and but all he could think of was Clementine. And then
Mhm.
she's like, for 7 years? And
Mhm.
he's like, yeah, for 2555 days.
My
But who's
God.
counting?
Oh my God, of course.
So and she's like, but then he says, but the wait was worth it. So they
Aww.
go into her apartment, they start making out, he takes his shirt off and everything, and then she sees a new tattoo over
Mhm.
his heart,
Mhm.
and it's a lemon flower.
Aww.
And then she's like, she's like, when did you get this? And he's like, almost 7 years ago. And then she's like, what do you tell people when they ask you about it? And then he says that I tell them about a girl I fell in love with at the right place but the wrong time. But now I can finally say that I got the timing right.
Oh my God. That's so sweet.
Yeah. And then, like, you know, they kiss some more, and she sees like all the difference between the 26-year-old and the 33-year-old Ivan. Like, this Ivan has like crow's feet, and like he has 3 gray hair now, and she's thinking like how she's gonna give him more gray hair over the years and stuff.
Mhm.
And like they end up happily together.
Mm.
So in the epilogue of the book, they've lived at this apartment for some time. Clementine and Ivan have spent a lot of days and, like, you know, a lot of time happy, cooking for each other, laughing. She's painting, all of that. But now she's moving out. She sold the apartment to someone else, and she's reminiscing. Like, the day they're moving out, she's reminiscing about all the memories she has as a child in the apartment with her aunt, and then meeting Ivan in that
Mhm.
time thing, and then spending time with the current James in it. And she's letting it all go, but not really.
Yeah.
So I want to, like, I know these are like the exact words from the book. She's like, um because the things that matter the most never really leave. The love stays, the love always stays, and so do we.
Aw.
So they, even though they're leaving the apartment, she's not sad about it. Like, those memories are always going to be there. The love that she felt with her aunt and with Ivan is always going to be there.
Yeah.
The end.
And they can finally leave without a ghost,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So that was nice.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Wait, but like, so the first time that they ran into each other was in the cab? Or he
So the first time, yeah, Clementine actually runs into Ivan is
Yeah.
in the cab when she was 22 years old. At
Okay.
that point, Ivan already knew everything about the apartment and
Okay.
how they're going to meet 7 years into his future, or into
Okay.
in their future.
Okay. And obviously she wouldn't know.
No, because
she only entered the apartment
7 years later.
7 years later.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so I mean, when I was reading this, like, how their past and present self both interact, and like they both, like, you know, plant seeds of what they're going to be in the future is just so trippy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the present Clementine is telling the old Ivan about how he's going to be successful, and how the old um, Ivan is telling the young Clementine how she should go into publishing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, it's the most complicated invisible string ever.
Yeah. Yeah, but it is like kind of a mind fuck.
It is. It was honestly a little exhausting reading it and then rereading it to narrate it, because I was like, oh my God, they had so many interactions in the past and the present.
Mhm.
Or like fucking Clementine keeps meeting the past and the present James. How do I keep the timelines straight?
Yeah. So how was it written? Like, it would just say, "Oh, she goes back to the apartment,
And
then
she sees Ivan, because
sees
that's the
Ivan."
only place she sees him, right?
Yeah, but then when it's the present tense, he's
Anytime
written
she's
as James.
yeah.
Okay.
That's why I kept saying that I'll refer to the past person as Ivan and the present person as James.
Oh, okay.
Because
okay.
the present person she knows is she always refers to him as James.
Oh, okay.
Because he is James to the world.
Yeah.
And she only knows Ivan to be the young, naive dishwasher.
Oh, okay.
And she, in her head, is like, in her head, they are also two different people, because she doesn't see the old Ivan in this James.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Cute. I'm glad that he went back to his original idea of the restaurant, though.
Yeah, because she practically guilt tripped him. She's
Yeah.
like, do you think your grandfather will be proud of this? And first he was defensive of it, because, who do you think you are, coming back to me after so many years and shitting on my hard work?
Yeah.
Anybody would take offense to it.
Yeah.
But then I'm glad he recognized that, he did lose himself.
Yeah.
A little bit,
Mhm.
not completely. Because he also says that, you change is good. Like, I have changed. You also need to change. You're not the same person from that apartment
Mhm.
anymore. And that hits her. That's why she quits her job.
Yeah. Because she had to look inwards too.
Yeah. Because she was also struggling with grief, not actually dealing with it, but just, pushing it away
Mm.
and thinking she has to do this thing to be a successful person, but it was actually not what she wanted.
Mm.
But the banter and the dialogues is so good in this book. It's my favorite part. There's so many things I've highlighted in this book, Shreya. I can't even begin to explain. Like, I've never highlighted so many things ever, except maybe A Court of Mist and Fury.
Mhm.
I have underlined stuff and like put sticky notes and all of that between the interactions. And then it's this book. It is so sweet. Let me see.
You're gonna.
I can.
It's gonna be. Oh my god! Oh my god! What? Really?
Because there's only so much I can paraphrase, right?
Yeah.
But the actual words are so beautiful. In the beginning, when Clementine is describing this, she says, I loved how a book, a story, a set of words in a sentence, organized in the exact right order, made you miss places you have never visited and people you have never met.
Wow.
I was like, this is the whole reason I read. This is why I read.
Yeah. That's so well written.
Exactly.
Damn.
Exactly. Oh, when he says, I don't like it when we fight lemon, look at the emojis I've put on it. Oh, and then, one part when they're James and Clementine are at the food truck, and he's just talking about food and stuff. Like, the way she's written, the way he lights up when he talks about it, it's like, and then all the other people who were standing in line, it felt like he's the flame and they were the moth to the flame. Like, they were all just gravitating towards him
My
to
God.
listen to him talk about food and the art of it and all of that. He's like, and because the author says, when he lit up, we were like moths to a flame. This was the part of him I feared had disappeared, but he'd just schooled it and kept it hidden for friends who wouldn't give up his secret.
Oh my gosh.
Bro, this is a great book. Just the way it's written, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah.
And it's a unique concept too. I mean, it's a challenge to write or like to think about all the possibilities and the loopholes on like how your characters would interact with each other at different points in time, you know?
Exactly. And I think writing something about time jump is difficult. Like people always leave loopholes.
Yeah.
Big loopholes and plot holes in it. But she did a good job. Like she tied all the bows together.
Yeah. She kept in mind like what the question would be, you know, which is the biggest question is why wouldn't he try to find her for 7 years, you know? And then she answered that question too.
Exactly.
So
like in the beginning we always thought like why didn't he, because he doesn't answer, right? But then we slowly find out why he doesn't look for her, or he actually does look for her.
Yeah, and he finds her but he can't tell her.
Yeah, because she doesn't know him.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, she says 7 years ago I would have been terrible for him. 22 and fresh off my first real heartbreak, having gallivanted off with my aunt all over the summer, all over Europe. Love wasn't something that I was looking for. That's why she's glad she didn't meet him when she was that young.
Yeah.
And she writes about her aunt's death. She's like, sometimes the people you loved left you halfway through a story. Sometimes they left you without a goodbye. And sometimes they stayed around in little ways, in the memory of a musical, in the smell of their perfume, in the sound of the rain, and the itch for adventure, and the yearning for that liminal space between one airport terminal and the next.
Oh. Damn.
Yeah.
Anything else to add?
No.
Okay. We'll end it here.
Yeah.
If this episode piqued your interest and you want more details, then read the book. See you in the next episode.